today is about enrolling. Thank you for remembering the recording.
That was
Our topic today is about enrolling, and that's why you want to do a video. Why you want to put something on Facebook is to enroll people into your class. So the whole idea of enrolling used to be so scary to me. How am I going to enroll? Until I realized it's just about having a connecting conversation with somebody without being attached to the result of whether they say yes or no. And so there's a woman who used to live in Houston. Her name is Diana Gruber, and she was a really good enroller. And she created a little graphic that we're going to use today to show you and kind of teach you a little bit about enrolling and then let you have some practice. As soon as I understood this graphic, I thought, ha, I can do that. And I'm hoping it's that way for you too, because we're enrolling all the time, whether we're inviting someone to a movie or enrolling somebody to taste something we've cooked or enrolling someone to walk beside us in partnership. Enrolling is connecting and doing the deep listening that shows that I see you. And that's what everybody in the world wants, is to be seen for who they are. So let's take a look, Karin, if you can share this graphic and we'll walk through it a bit. I think you'll like it. I really like it.
It kept opening two things over each other, so just give me a moment. Do you still see it? Because it's off my screen.
No, we don't see it anymore.
You don't see it anymore. Okay, let me try one more time. Sorry, everybody.
That's okay. That's part of being real and sharing something when you have your online class. It's not always going to be seamless. You may have a start and then another start. It's okay. But this is a conversation between a man and a woman. I think that will work. When you're having a conversation with anybody and you say, hey, what's new? What's going on in your life? They're generally going to tell you about one of two things. They're going to tell you either a challenge that they have, some sort of problem that they have in their life, or they're going to talk to you about something they're excited about, a project that they're doing or a dream that they have. Either way, no matter whether they say, so the guy is talking to the woman and he says, hey, what's new? And whether she talks about a challenge or a project, he's listening, deeply listening. And he'll say more. Tell me more about it. And maybe she comes to a stopping point and he'll either say, tell me some more, or what do you see getting in your way? And if you have a block in your path, how can you see any way that you could do it differently? It's about the guy asking questions to get more information from the other person. Often we think enrolling is about us saying, hey, I've got this great course and it did all this stuff for me and blah, 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 blah. It's not. It's about listening to what's going on in the other person's life. So by saying what's getting in your way or what changes you could do, it encourages her to say more. And you keep listening and giving her feedback. At the same time, you watch their face, their body language. And sometimes you're talking to somebody and you know how their face will change for a minute? It'll get either really stiff, or maybe they were smiling before and then they get sort of solid. And you can say, I noticed that your face just changed. What just happened for you? Or I noticed that your body posture just changed when you talked about that difficulty you were having. What are you feeling? And you're just doing that loop of asking and having them tell. And you all can do that because that's what you do. You ask questions to people in order to get to know what's going on in their life. And so you keep listening. And then at some point, there's going to be a little thread that you can say, like if you're enrolling, say, for the More to Life weekend, if I hear somebody say that they're having some difficulty in their relationships, I'll say, after I've listened to them for a while, I'll say, well, there's something that helped me with that. Would you like to hear what helped me? And they almost always say yes. And you'll say, actually, I took a course, and it could be either the self-esteem course or the other one, or the More to Life weekend. And you say, in that weekend, we are taught to look at the connections that we have to ourselves and to other people, and to clear out maybe some of the judgments and some of the beliefs that we have that are standing in the way of a deeper connection with that person. Is that something that you might be interested in hearing more about? And at that point, like you see on the diagram, they're either going to say yes, or they're going to say no, or they're going to say maybe. If they say no, okay, thank you. I've really enjoyed talking with you today. And that's the end of the conversation. You've had a win because you've had an experience of really deeply listening to that person. They've been heard all the way down to the bottom. If they say yes, you say, well, there happens to be a preview, or I'm giving a preview, or I have a flyer that could tell you more about this course. Would it be okay if I emailed it to you? And then you wait and see if you get another yes. Most people will say, at this point, will say yes, because you've already done a brilliant job of listening to them. And then you get their email, you send them something. If they say maybe, you say, okay, well, what might stand in your way of, taking this course or looking at it? Sometimes people will say money, but it's never money. That's just something that they say to throw a wall up. And you say, well, what if money wasn't an option? Could you see yourself taking this course? The more yeses you get to your questions, the closer you are to them enrolling. And as soon as you decide that you're not attached to whether they say yes or no, it gives you a freedom. It opens up the playground for you to be connecting. And you're all good at it. You wouldn't be a licensed facilitator if you weren't good at connecting. So, any questions?
I would like to adjust a little bit something that you said,
Okay.
in my opinion. You said it's never money. There are people who don't have the disposable income to do it. But what I usually do in that situation, I say, well, yeah, that's realistic. Everybody has to make decisions about their money. If that wasn't in the way, though, what else might be in the way? Because I want to acknowledge what they've said, and then look at it. Because, like Sylvia said, very often, at least in the United States, it's people say it's money, and they may really believe that, but they may not be thinking creatively about it or understanding the value of the course. So if I say, yeah, I can see that. Besides that, what else might be in the way? And then oftentimes you get to the emotional reasons why they're afraid to take the class or afraid to look at this. And that's really where you can get into looking at the value of things. And then if they start to get to where they see the value for them, what it could possibly do for them, then they may be more open to saying, well, we could do a payment plan, or, is there some way that if you really want to do this, that you could generate a little bit of extra income over time and take the next class. About us getting creative with them too, because so many times if somebody's in a box, if I'm in a box, I'm not seeing those options. And the way I look at enrollment is they may never do the course, but they had that conversation with me and I presented something different than how they normally look at the world. And if that's the only thing that they got from the interaction, then that's enough. They've learned something, they heard, that's great. And if it goes further than that, that's even more beneficial. But it takes the pressure off of me in having the conversation.
Mhm. Thank you, Ross. You were right. And if it is money, there's many, many creative ways to deal with the money issue. I've helped people have garage sales. I've said, do you have a birthday or Christmas coming up that members of your family have? Do you know 10 friends who might give you $20? You know, if, Colette,
Could I share something about money?
yeah,
All those years ago, when I went to an introductory session for the More to Life weekend, this was so foreign to me to be doing anything like that. And at the end of the evening, I knew this is it. This is for me. My husband absolutely did everything he could think of to prevent me doing it out of his fear. So I knew that he wouldn't be providing any money. But as it turned out, I had saved £5 a week, £5 a month for 4 years. And it came to £240. And that was exactly how much the course cost. And I had a little bit of interest that would pay for some food over the weekend. I really wrestled with it. That was my running away money. I had to have it there. The thought that I would put everything forward for this weekend, not knowing really what the weekend was about. But I made that decision to do it, and I went 100%. And my goodness, in line with so many other people, that completely changed how I viewed everything, including myself. So
Well, you
it's
risk
the
that.
one thing that can change everything.
it did.
You risk that 240 pounds. How many people have you enrolled into courses?
What since then? Oh, I don't know. An awful lot of people. Yeah, and then I enrolled my sister, who also enrolled all her clients onto the courses. So it just went on. Yes.
Yeah.
I've lost track, to be honest. I used to count them, but then I lost track.
Yeah. So hundreds, easily hundreds and hundreds between you and your sister. That 240 pounds changed all of those lives. It didn't just change your life, it changed all of them.
No, it changed my children's life. My sons did it. My sister, as they did it. Everything changed within the family. A lot of it challenging for people who thought I was, as one of my brothers said, what do you want to go and do that for? You know, I was depressed. Go down to the pub, have a drink with your friends, which is what he would do, of course. Having said that, in his last few days on this earth, when I was with him, he said to me, where did you learn what I was doing with him? I said, well, the place that you have no time for, which is the More to Life weekend. And he went, well, okay. And then he said, I'm only going to say this once. He said, but that More to Life weekend that you say, it's done you good. But it did him good because I was with him, you know, in a different way.
Yeah. And how often do we make judgments about people, about whether they can afford it, whether
Yeah.
they'll do it, whether they're the type of person who would share in mortal life or not? You know, I'm going to encourage you to suspend your judgments, notice what they are, and let them go, because we do not know. I've invited people to the weekend that didn't speak the whole time. I've
Mm.
invited people that couldn't shut up the whole weekend, you know, and we don't know. We just think we know.
Mm. Yeah.
Sometimes people have no idea that there's even something like this possible until we say something. And, you know, they may still say no, but at least they know it's out there.
Yeah.
Janet?
I find the part about letting go of attachment to their response to be the most freeing way to have a connecting conversation whatsoever. But
Yeah.
I've also learned over the years that it's important for me to suspend prejudging whether or not this is right for a person, or whether or not this would be a good opportunity to talk to a person about it, because that's just me being judgmental. And when I get myself out of the way, sharing about this work is as natural and easy as could possibly be. But it's me and my own judgments that get in the way.
Yeah. Thank you. So we're going to have some time to practice. Ross, you want to lead us into the
Yeah, why don't we take a break, because we're almost an hour in. We'll take a 5-minute bio break, snack break, stretch break, however that works for you, and come back, let's say top of the hour.
Okay.
Karen, Sylvia's about to share some info. We're making a little course correction.
You will see in your classes, sometimes a discussion is rich and you want to go with it, and then it alters a little bit of your manual. And so over the break, that's what Ross and I did, is see how are we going to shift a bit. And you'll be doing the same thing in your courses.
Yeah, and so Sylvia knew when I was saying, let's take the break a little early, that there was a conversation coming. So yeah, we made a little, I don't want to say little, we made an adjustment in order to be able to spend time on something that we're really looking forward to talking to you about. We've talked about in the past couple of courses, we've looked at this idea of 4 different kinds of prospects, starting with Jilly's video. And we talked about pragmatist, theorist, activist, and reflector. Karen, when she finds it, we'll be displaying those up, so we have them to look at and refer to again. But what we're wanting to do, we're going to take some time here in the next little bit and look at each one of those individually and think about what would we say, or how would we change our conversation to make it more attractive to that particular type of person. You know how when you're talking to one friend who's really outgoing and bubbly and all of this, the conversation goes one way, you interact with them in a particular way depending on your relationship with them, and then somebody else you might interact with a little bit differently because they're a different personality type. So that's what we're wanting to think about. Karen, do you have the one that has the definitions on it, or can we cut and paste that into the chat?
I can share that.
Yeah. That way we start with
Yeah.
a reminder about.
Do you want me to stop this share, Sylvia?
Yeah, stop your share and
There we go. That's it.
okay.
And Sylvia, just FYI, you could take the share. You wouldn't have to ask her to stop. As a Zoom tip.
Say that again.
If somebody else is sharing and you're a co-host and you want to share, you can just start your share and it'll stop the other person's share automatically and start.
Okay. All right. So that's what happened then. I did not know that.
So
So in the 4 learning styles, I had sent you this to review, but we'll just do a really quick review. The activist is a person who learns by doing. In education, we call it the kinesthetic learner, the person who's got to get in there and have an activity in order for it to make sense. The theorist is a person who's really context oriented. They want to understand the why of it, and they have to see the why, the background of it, how it fits in with other things, and the bottom line. The pragmatist, it's like, okay, what can I use? What will I be able to use right away? It's like when I'm talking to a pragmatist about the More to Life weekend, I say, you will get step-by-step tools, 5 steps right away that you could put into practice Monday morning. That's what they want to hear. How can I use it right away? And then the reflector is the one who's got to stop and think about it a minute. They're not your jump and go people. They're your sit back and think about it for a minute. In the class, you'll notice they're not the first ones to raise their hand. They've got to think about the question and ponder a little bit, and then they raise their hand. So let's just take, we all have pieces of ourselves in this. But if you were to ask yourself, how many of you are more of an activist? You learn by doing right away. Okay. How many of you are more theorist? You got to have the context about it and understand that first. Okay. How many are pragmatist? You want to know how you're going to use it and that you can use it right away. And how many of you are reflectors? You've got to sit back and think of it for a minute. Yeah, we all have a bit of each. And Ross put
yeah, I put it in the chat because I know that's
some,
to look at.
Yeah.
So I put a couple of asterisks ahead of the 4 different types to make it easier for you to be able to look at them. Because we know this is new for y'all. It's new for us too. We've had a little more time to consume it and look at it. But what we want to do now is take a run at, and we recognize this is all new. So this is an exploration. We want to look at if we know we're talking to a pragmatist, what would we say to them that would be attractive to them? What are the things? And this is where Karin's going to share the grid, because we want to give you a little bit of a cheat sheet that if we all sit here and look at it for a bit, and then we'll send this out with the homework, then you have an idea of how to approach each one of these 4 types of people.
what would you notice about the person who wants to put it into action right away? How would you know that about a person?
No, it's not that question. It's what would you say to them that would be attractive? We'll go to the question about how would you know that about them next. But first, we want to think about,
Okay.
yeah. So pretend I'm a pragmatist and you're talking to me. What would you say to me about whatever you're enrolling me into that would help me see the value, that is something I can implement right away, that I can go away with some gold nuggets? So how would that influence your conversation with me?
Janet.
I would say something like, in this course, we'll show you some things that you can replicate almost immediately in your own life. We'll teach you some things you can duplicate right away.
Really? Well, that sounds pretty interesting. What kind of things?
Exactly.
Well, no, let's pretend
So-
we're having a little conversation here. What kind of
Oh, all right. All right. So we'll teach you some techniques that you can use, that you can put into place in your personal life, in your professional life, in your social life, in your spiritual life. You'll actually have an opportunity during this weekend to practice it for yourself. And then we'll give you written materials that you'll be able to take home with you, and you can begin practicing them with another human being.
So when you say practical techniques, what are these techniques meant to do, or what are they about? I don't really understand that piece.
The techniques will help you distinguish what you think and how you feel so that you can make clear choices in your life. And when you're able to do that, it'll bring a whole new quality to the conversations that you have with people.
Well, that would be helpful, because a lot of times I get frustrated in conversations with people and then I get angry and it just doesn't go very well.
Exactly. And then these techniques will teach you how to deal with your communication skills, and they'll teach you how to deal with what you can do with your anger so that it doesn't come across while you're talking with the others.
That'd be worth the price of admission.
Yes, indeed.
So that's part of how she did a really good job of listening to what I was saying back to her, and then recognizing the things that would be helpful in the weekend, specific to me, specific to what I'm sharing, so that I can start seeing the value. I have it that I can't enroll anybody into anything. And that sounds a little counterintuitive, but what I believe is that I can help somebody else enroll themselves. And that's all I'm working at, is answering their questions and helping them understand what's on offer. It takes a lot of pressure off of me when I hold it that way. Thank you, Janet. Anybody else? How would you approach a pragmatist? Raina Shay.
Well, I'm not sure, it's not very refined, but I was as for the homework, I was sort of brainstorming, and I was thinking of a simple exercise that I could give someone. But the way I worded it was, try the simple exercise the next time you're ultra focused on a task. But in order to make it more immediate, I think it might be more effective if I said, stop right now and think about the last time you were ultra focused on a task. And then ask yourself, how are you feeling in that moment? And do you like that feeling? And then, talk about how that can reveal what your motivational state was in that moment.
So yeah, so get them to re-experience, just like we teach in the weekend, re-experience the life shock, or re-experience the moment or the event, and recognize the energy around it, that they're uncomfortable or they're driven or they're scared or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, but I wanted to make it really like something really short and simple that they can just do on the spot, that they don't need like a lot of training around.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Take a real life example and go at it very simply. I like that. Let's see, Karin, let me help, or Sylvia, if we can help capture some of these points for Karin to put up on the graph. I don't want to lose these. So part of the pragmatist was about hearing their challenges and giving them specific feedback about what the tools on the weekend can help them with. So if a pragmatist is saying, I'm overscheduled and I'm struggling with figuring out how to handle all of this, and I get really angry with my coworkers, then we could say, well, there's a tool where you can look at resentments and get the resentments out of the way.
So Karin, you can just write, in this course, we'll teach you tools that you can use right away to solve, whatever issue you have. You could go ahead and put that in there. Yeah.
Or just, yeah, that you can use right away. Okay. And then Raina Shea's point, I think, was around having someone re-experience a challenging moment. And feel what they're feeling, notice their feelings about it. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have something that you think would be effective or actually connecting with a pragmatist? I can't see all the hands, Sylvia, so if you see somebody raising a hand. Okay.
Okay. Something else may come to you. Why don't we just switch to a different type?
All right, so let's see, activist. Let's go over to the activist. An activist, what?
I was going to say, what we know is that they learn by doing, sharing, and they like to actively get involved in something.
They learn by doing kind of deal.
Yeah.
So how would you adjust a conversation with someone like that so that they'd go, wow, that sounds just like what I'd like to do?
Yeah, think about the specific LF course that you're thinking you might teach next. What is it that you could say about the doing part of that course that might appeal to an activist?
Paulette, you came off mute. Yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking for an activist to let them know that this is experiential learning, and you learn by doing, and that experiential learning, as I understand it, is the most effective way of learning and retaining what you learn.
Yeah.
Okay, so focusing in on actually practicing, getting an opportunity to work to do it.
To do it rather than think about it. Yes.
It's not lecture, it's doing it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I usually say it's not sit and get. Kind of a Texas thing.
That would do, but not in the UK.
Let's see, activist learn by doing and sharing. So I could see an activist being, go ahead, call it.
That you can learn from being with other people who share, and that they may be a little further along than you are, so you can learn from them, and there'll be times that you're a little further away, further forward, and other people learn from you. So I think activists like, taking part, sharing, and learning from others as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Colette is our resident activist, so that's why she's given us all these great ideas. Janet?
I'd also add with an activist that sometimes there's work in large group, sometimes there's work one-on-one, and dyads and triads, so that sometimes they'll have an opportunity to learn in small group as well and actually practice what they're learning in small group.
That's a good point. because then they can see themselves doing it.
Yeah.
Putting
That's-
it in more concrete terms. The more concrete we can get, the less general it is, the more they'll start to be able to relate that to themselves, their personality, and their life. You know, something like if somebody's talking about the relationship is just not going well, and you know, they're just sick of their partner. It's like, well, we've got a process for that called the resentment process, forgiveness process, whatever it's called today. Good. Anybody else have anything else for activists? All right. Well, let's look at reflector then.
Ross,
Yeah, observe and think about the course.
and I just wanted to say something about
Yeah,
the
yeah,
activist.
great. Salepa, go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, it's more whenever I really just enroll them, it's more I'm talking more about connecting conversations where we learn to communicate effectively with others and
Mhm.
learn to listen. By interacting with that, we put into practice what we've been learning real time within the processes of training.
No, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
That we will
Thank you.
practice it in real time. Practice connecting in real time.
Because oftentimes activists are people that are wanting to create change in the world, wanting to do those sorts of things. And if they're frustrated with their communication skills, this could be a big attraction for them to be able to. And in fact, all of these conversations you're having, just by the fact that you're changing the conversation a bit, but depending on who you're talking to, you're actually modeling how they could learn how to communicate more effectively with that type, just in how you're communicating with them. And if you're having a conversation with multiple people that are different types, then it gets really interesting because that, you know, if somebody's paying attention, they can see that you're communicating to somebody about what would be the value for them specifically. Thank you, Setlopo. So let's see, reflector, observe and think. So they're going to listen to you and they're going to want to think about it. Likely they'll think about it more when they go away, and they may come back later with questions. So this one may give you a whole lot of cues about what would be working for them. They're going to be fairly quiet about it. Colette, what would you do with somebody like this?
Well, I was thinking physically give space. So
Ah,
I would say give plenty of space for them to, do what is natural for them to do.
mm-hmm. That's
Instead
true.
of getting right up close to them, move back a bit.
Mhm.
Move back a bit, and also, like, don't be. I think if you come across too enthusiastic, then I think that doesn't go down well.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
So,
pace yourself, I think, with a reflector.
Yeah, I think that giving space is not just physical space, but also giving plenty of wait time
Yeah,
mhm.
in there to get their answers.
yeah,
Yeah. Everybody knows that old saying that an extrovert thinks with their mouth moving and an introvert thinks with their mouth closed. So, you know, some people have to hear it and they form it as they're speaking about it. Others of us, you know, have it going on in our head, and what comes out has already had some think time to it. So that's why that space and pacing is real important. And the other thing is with the reflector, asking questions is going to be pretty interesting. I think this is because you're going to get maybe fewer cues about this, and that might be the tip off that they're a reflector if they're not giving you a whole lot of cues about what's attractive to them. You know, and there's nothing wrong with asking somebody. I'm trying to think of how to form the question. What kind, maybe it's, if you're not getting a whole lot from somebody, say, what do you generally look for, or what do you find interesting when you're learning? And if somebody says, oh, I usually just read the book, I go get the book, or I go get watch the YouTube video versus, I've got a friend that knows how to do something, so I call them up. And again, this is where the compassionate curiosity comes into play, because just being curious, oftentimes in the moment, it'll come to you something to ask or say. And it's practice too.
Raina Shay?
Well, I know we want to give plenty of space, but then I'm wondering if it might be okay with the reflector to say something like, maybe if you suspect they're a reflector, maybe you'd like some time to think about this. Would it be okay if I followed up with you? When would be a good time for you, for me to follow up with you? So like, I'm not pressing, like, I'm going to call you in 2 days, but like
Yeah.
make it more open for them to respond when, how much time they think they would need.
Yeah, I like that. They have a bit more control about it, and you get a better sense of when it'll work for them. And also with the reflector, it might be helpful to say, there's a great website. It's got a lot of information on it. If you're curious about this, is it okay if I send you the link? And they can, as they're reflecting, they can go look at the website and explore a little bit. That likely would work for a lot of different people, but that might work better for this type of a person because they're looking for information.
I was going to say, give them information for them to do what they will with it.
Janet.
Yeah, as we're having this discussion, it's occurring to me that it's important when giving presentations to appeal to people anywhere on the quadrant. And I was thinking about how I gave a presentation last week at the hospital, and I spoke about power of purpose, and I had printed flyers where people could pick it up and take it home so they could look at it, and it had QR codes on where they could go to register for it. And I think something like that, if you have printed material or printed media, would be helpful for the reflector because they could take it home and work with it that way. And I made sure that, every piece of material has a website and a telephone number as well, but it gives them permission to be in charge. And as we're having this discussion, I'm thinking about the importance of all of that.
Good point.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Claude.
I think it's, which I haven't thought of before, but a reflector, I would guess you follow their lead. They're not wanting to be led. So you need to follow their lead. And I'd never thought of it before.
Yeah, they're turned off really quickly if you try to push. And they're never going to be a person who's going to say, it's on sale today. And if you make up your mind today, there's a discount. They're going to be
an automatic no.
It's going to be, yeah.
Oh, all right. I think that's a good start on reflector. Now, theorists need to understand why. So I can speak to this a little bit because I think this is my sort of baseline one. I'm a context-oriented thinker. And if I've got kind of the big picture and I get a sense of what the map looks like, then I can plug in detail a lot easier and make it relational. So theorists need to understand why, want the background or the facts, maybe know something about how the course was created in a way that gets us to a bottom line. Okay. Go ahead.
One of my sons wants the context, and also he goes, okay, Mum, bottom line, whereas I'm not near the bottom line yet. So
Right. Yeah.
I liked what Jen did in what she submitted in the Google Drive was, just talking a little bit about Brad and Roy and the background and their backgrounds and how long the course has been around. I thought that was probably something the theorist would like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it started back when all the self-help started way back in the 80s, and it was, a couple of guys that were priests at the time and wanted to look at how do we create a human technology that lets people deal with everyday problems and everyday wants. I start to get a sense of how long it's been around, because part of it too is about credentializing the course or the organization or yourself. So in addition to presenting things to them in a way that hopefully rings for them, it's also about credentializing yourself or the organization, the course. If somebody tells me this has been around for 40 years, it started in the 80s during that self-help thing, and has developed into a whole series of courses that build on each other, I'd think, well, that's got some leg to it.
Yeah, some longevity.
Mm-hmm. So who else? What else do you think about a theorist? Anybody else have any ideas about that?
Especially if you are one.
Yes.
Refilway, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was thinking how I got involved. The context that was put for me, I was actually doing an assessment with a psychologist. I don't know if it's a psychologist, but they were like analyzing my drawing and how I was writing. So because of that personal context and saying, so they gave me an analysis of how you projecting yourself and you wanting to be in business was not okay. What was the key thing? Oh, so what they picked up is that you put your others first before your own. You tend to put others first before yourself, and
Right.
which is not an ideal thing in business. So would you like something that can help you to bring yourself more forward? So, which is, yeah, for me, what helped me with the context, because I am a big picture type of thing. So when she mentioned that, I was like, oh, okay, if that's the case, and the bottom line for me was, oh, then there's something that can help me to, yeah, to be more comfortable with putting myself forward.
That's a good point.
So yeah, so that was I think where it helped me as a theorist to say, yeah, what it can help.
Yeah, because the theorist tends to be more introverted.
Yeah, they're similar to reflectors, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
It is because I do told I told between the two, the reflector and the theorist. So I would like to, okay, what's the big picture? But then also want to have a moment to reflect. Is this for me or not? Yeah.
Karen, add to helpful to me to come forward more. Concrete example of how it can be helpful to me to come forward more. Colette?
Yes, could I ask you what you think about feelings? I was thinking the reflector would not be wanting you to ask how you're feeling now. What about a theorist, Ross? Would you welcome somebody and how are you feeling?
I think at least for me, as a theorist, historically, from my experiences growing up and whatever, the patterns were about not necessarily feeling my feelings. It was all about figure it out, avoid problems, all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I also was, in a way, starving to learn how to bring my feelings into it. So there was that. I basically was going to a therapist, and she said, I think that you're ready for some next steps. Why don't you look at this? So it was, she had the credibility with me because she's my therapist. But if I see somebody who's able to talk to me about like the big picture and understand something, but they also are compassionate and open, that would have been the thing at the time that would have been really attractive to me, that they would have been modeling for me that I would have wanted to learn how to do for myself.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
In fact, Ross, I remember you telling me at your first training, I wish I could, I'm crying about something. And you said, I wish I could show my feelings the way you are.
Yeah, that sounds like something I would say for sure at that point.
And for you, that was similar in the way Refill Way was saying it, to come forward. For you, that was a come closer.
Mm-hmm. And that it's safe to be able to do that. You know, if somebody's learned that it's not safe to necessarily be open up that much or share feelings or something, just to watch somebody else do it and be comfortable with it, and you know, not lead into what it would lead into at my house. That alone, like I said, having that enrolling conversation where somebody models that for me, that would have been beneficial on its own. So
Right.
yeah.
Mm.
So would it be helpful to capture this screen and send it out to you? Karen, do you know how to do that?
I can grab it. I can take a screenshot.
Okay.
I was about to suggest that.
Thank you, Ross. And then we'll share it via email.
I was
Thank
going to
you.
say, as a theorist, I like to know how it works. I want to know how and why. Like I don't like it when, you know, people try to tempt you in with morsels. Well, come on, and you'll learn more later. You got to experience it. You got to like, no, I want you to tell me how it works so I kind of know what I'm getting into.
Right.
So,
So what would you want somebody to say to you now that you know what you know? How would it have been effective to speak to you?
I suppose maybe a little bit more about I guess what is the power of self-esteem? What's the relationship between self-esteem and these things that you're talking to me about? What is I think also something that is interesting to me is that it's part of the More to Life organization, but it's delivered at a very local community level. What's behind that? I always find it very helpful to have written information too.
Mm-hmm.
So something I can look at. But it's.
So if you said, well, I don't really understand how this organization kind of happens or whatever, and I said, well, it started out in one place in California, and so many people found it valuable that it just sort of organically spread. It spread to Houston and it spread to London, and people got friends in the family and or coworkers or whoever they had connections with together, and they just started having trainings. The two guys that started it up would show up where somebody had organized a group, and eventually in a lot of places, people found it so beneficial and grew so much or learned so much that they started their own activities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because then it sounds like a natural way that things happen. You know, if you start going to a book club, you get to know people in the book club, and then you start having interests with them and things. And so that's just very similar to how human communication and community develop.
Okay, one more, Janet.
Yeah, I remember Roy talking about the early days of beginning the training. And he was talking about how he had his private practice and Brad had his private practice. And they had just done the Landmark Forum. They called it EST at the time. And all the new human development programs were beginning to come out. And one day it occurred to Roy, we could make a lot of money seeing therapy over a really long period of time. or we can teach people some things they can learn for themselves. And once they learn it for themselves, they can get through some big issues relatively quickly. He was not discounting the need for therapy because a lot of people need therapy. But when he spoke about how they saw a way to put a lot of people in one room at one time to teach some things that could be very therapeutic and help them move through issues faster, as a theorist myself, it helped me to hear that description.
I like that. I like that. Yeah.
I like that too.
Because then it's somebody gets the sense that it wasn't about somebody trying to create something to make money off of or this or that they were already good at what they were doing, but they wanted to make it more available to a wider population.
Absolutely. And if you already laid the scene with, they were both Episcopal priests. Oh, and Brad was also a clinical psychologist. They've already got the credential behind them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So credentialing would be really important to a theorist, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe to add that, I think I can't remember when, I don't know which trainer had said it to me or in the training that, you know, this is a beautiful cause that two therapists who also happen to be theologists came together to put this together because they saw a pattern in people where they were struggling over similar things. And as a result, yeah, so the More to Life was a product of two minds basically coming together to create so that one can be able to self-help. For me as a theorist, it's like, oh, okay, I don't then need to go and research. It's people who have done already the work in theology and in psychotherapy, and then now they put it out, simplified it for me to consume it on a day-to-day basis. So this is just in addition to what Janet had said. I think that was also a selling point. I think it was on day one of the course itself of the More to Life weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of let you relax in that that had been done.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't need to figure it out and go out and research. So they've done all the studying and packaged it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so you get curious and excited about what they might have to say about these things and what you might learn from that situation.
Precisely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ross, have you taken a screenshot yet?
Let me take one more because I think there's been some changes made.
Okay.
So just make sure I get the last version.
And Karin, what we'll do is have he'll take a screenshot and then we'll take that away and come up with the original 4 squares. You're doing a great job in capturing this, by the way. It's not easy.
So we're getting a great sense of, let me save this, make sure it doesn't go away somewhere. That would be hard.
Karin, did you want to say something? Okay.
So are you starting to get a better sense of what we mean? Yeah, we can drop the share, I think, at this point too. Thank you. What we mean when we say being able to change the conversation a bit to appeal to somebody from their perspective and not from our perspective. Are these examples helping with that? Making a little more sense? Yeah. So the next piece then is, now that we have an idea of how we would want to talk to somebody that's one of these particular types, now the tricky bit is, how do we determine what type they might be, right? What will we do? What are the
cues?
Yeah, what are the cues? What would we hear them say that would go, oh, I think that's a theorist, or oh, I think that's a pragmatist? And those of us that are those particular things, we can help by saying, well, if I said this, and if I said this, and if I said this, then that probably would tell you I'm a theorist or a pragmatist.
Or what body language might you see that would tell you that they're one of those? Because if you're given a preview, you don't have all day to decide what they are. You want to be able to, in a few minutes, decide who the people are in your audience.
Or if it's you're out to dinner with a bunch of people and you're having a casual conversation at the dinner table in a restaurant with somebody, it's one of those things that you can, and the other piece is as you do this more and more, you'll get better at it and you'll get quicker at it. You'll get more intuitional about it, where you pick up on things quicker. So what would a theorist, what would their conversation sound like that would help clue you in that somebody's a theorist? Call it, wait, you're an activist, right? Yeah. Raina, what are some of the things that you notice about your own communication style that somebody else might pick up as being a theorist?
Well, I do tend to ask a lot of questions.
Ah,
And so I might say, you know, I guess I might even ask something about, well, you know, who started this? How long has it been around? You know, do you have evidence that it works? Or
looking for evidence. Yeah.
Okay.
How about
Sure.
you, Philway? What about you? What might you say?
Also, I think it was not personally for me, but then for my questions, like, but then how am I trying to, I'm trying to think of how to pose the question,
No,
but it was research based to say how are you keeping update with the research on what my English is going. So yeah, I'm
like
trying
maybe do you keep statistics on the people who take the course and if they say it helps
yeah,
them?
it's a similar question that I had from somebody. It's like, yes, how are you maintaining progress? How are you checking progress? And what research do
Hello?
you
Sorry,
Say
go
that
ahead.
last part again. How are you tracking progress? And then I missed the
Yeah,
last.
and then the research, I can't remember how they posed the question, but they were actually wanting to know, do we keep updating the program with recent research? So
Ah,
what is it based on neuroscience? Is it based on, you know, so those type of questions. So that, yeah, that was coming from the other. For me, it was, I think I'm more of the reflective because I was more on the curious side. It's like, oh, I tend to listen and then decide later, like whether I want to pursue something or not.
Mhm.
Yeah, but in the theories tend to think of, oh, please give me something to refer to. What is this based on so that I can go and read up about it?
okay.
So, and the reflector part of you, if I'm speaking to you, what might I notice that would let me know that you're a reflector? Is there some words that you tend to use, even like, I'd like to think about it, or that sounds interesting. If you say that sounds interesting, is that a clue to me that you're a reflector, do you think?
Yeah, verbally, I'll say, let me think about it. I think physical cues for me, I tend to write down things so that I can reflect on it later. Yeah, and I'm also that person, like even like in a, not necessarily with more to life, but in a store, I don't like being assisted. I want to take time to read labels and, then I'll decide for myself. Then if I need help, then that's when I'll raise my hand.
So you're comfortable in reaching back out to somebody after you've had some time to think about it if you have questions.
Precisely, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. You don't want to be bombarded. And I think that is how reflectors feel when, more extroverted people keep bombarding them with more stuff instead of giving them space.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I know about myself is that when I'm thinking, I'm actually thinking in words. It's like I'm having a conversation with myself in my head. And if somebody's talking the whole time, then I can't hear myself think, literally. And so sometimes I'll ask for some think time, or I'll have to juggle it and balance it as best I can and recognize that I'm just not going to get to think this through as much as I might typically if I had more space.
Or they might say, well, that sounds interesting. I'll think about it.
And then you can follow up with, can I send you the website so you can do some more of your own research? Or would you like me to, call you back sometime next week or whatever works for you to see if you have any questions about this?
I think I'd like to hear it. Yes. Do I being asked? Do I have any questions? Yeah.
When I think about when I'm feeling more like a reflector, I do think that word interesting could be a good cue, that it's just sort of a catch-all term that says maybe I'm still processing or digesting, maybe I need more information, but I definitely need to think some more before I can come up with a more descriptive term for what I'm thinking. It's a good fallback word when I'm not sure what I think yet.
Well, it's not something that somebody who is an emotional processor is going to say. Somebody who's emotional is not going to say, well, that's interesting. That's so that's a good clue too. All right, so what would be something that an activist might say in a conversation that would clue you into them being an activist?
I would think, let me see. I would want to know what difference has it made to you?
Mm.
I want to know, hmm.
So that doing bit, you're wanting to know what the doing bit was for the other person. What difference does it make for you?
Yes. What else would it be? I've never thought it in this way before, be honest.
Well, I don't think any of us have. It's a little bit of new territory. But
Yeah.
ever since I saw Jilly's video, it's occurred to me that I want to do a lot more thinking in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and after we've had, I'll see you, Randy. I'll come back to you in just a sec. After we've had this conversation today, it might make a lot of benefit to go back and rewatch Gilly's video again, right? Now that you know more about what she's speaking about, there will be other things that land with you.
Yeah, I would want to know who else does this course.
Oh.
Yeah, who is it effective for? What kind of people tend to do it? That kind of a thing, you mean?
Well, yeah, I want to know who's engaged in it. You know, who's actually taken part.
Okay. And Raina, back to you.
Well, I was thinking about when Refilway said about taking notes. I think a reflector is more likely to be taking actual notes, whereas an activist might be doodling
Drawing
and
pictures.
drawing pictures. And of course, it's not every activist, but they also may be squirming around a little, moving around in their seat, getting adjusted. They may even stand up and find a reason to walk around the room a couple of times if it's physical,
Good point.
If they
if it's
really,
in person.
there's really something about it that's engaging them. For somebody that's kinesthetic, I could see them standing up and moving around because there's something about body processing that happens for them. So those, I wouldn't have thought of those things.
Janet, you're on mute.
I would add on to that they might not just doodle or stand up or move around. They might just pick up their phone and start scrolling. Multitasking.
Yeah.
Might be boredom, might be a sign of boredom.
Or just that's what they do. It's not necessarily that they're bored, but they're used to doing two things at one time.
Yeah, yeah. And my apologies for leaving. My doctor just called, so I'm back now.
Good, thank you.
All right. Anybody else that has some activists or have talked to people that you believe now are activists? What did you pick up from them? I'm trying to think of who I know that I think are activists and how they behave. It is that sense of I want to jump in.
Yeah. I think that would be curious. I know I'm very curious. about how something plays out. And I would put a lot of store on the person who is talking to me about a course. I'd really pay a lot of attention to that person.
Like how they behave and how they interact would
Yeah.
be more important to you than the theory behind it. if
That's
you're
right.
activist.
Yes, I probably wouldn't be too concerned about at that stage about the theory behind it.
Yep.
And just more how does it work? I want to know, how does it work?
Nice. Raina Shay.
I'm wondering, out of these four, I'm kind of thinking, and others can tell me if you think I'm, on the right track. I'm thinking the activists might be the most likely to get into storytelling. Like if you were to ask a question like, that you're expecting just short answers from, but then the person who starts telling a story is more likely to be the activist.
I would say Raina Shay, that's pretty good. Yeah.
As the activist laughs.
Yeah. Too much information.
All right. What about the pragmatist? The person who wants to put things into practice right away, that wants to come out with a nugget they can use.
Can you give me an example of, do on the course?
Okay, that's one thing they might say. Can you give me an example of something you can use?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that they can take that right into their life. It's their little nugget.
Yeah, the piece about step-by-step instructions, if I'm speaking with somebody and they seem pretty methodical, they're not like real emotive and all of that stuff. And if we're having a conversation and they're responding directly to the questions I might ask, or they're staying on topic with what the conversation is, that might tell me somebody is pretty much practical and in the moment. Does anybody on the call see themselves as a pragmatist or exhibit that fairly frequently?
I do.
Okay.
It's like if I see the three circles, maybe they do self, others, in context, or they do the EMR. Right away, I'm thinking about how I can use that in my life.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say, that a question they might ask is, how am I going to use what I get in this course in my life?
And visuals are real important to me. All those words, lots of words, not so much. But if I see a diagram, boom.
Yep.
If we're in a social situation, I'm obviously not going to be able to draw a diagram, but if I can describe it in words, is that a halfway decent substitute for actually having a diagram? If I can,
or like, you can go like this. When you think about lenses that you look at your life through, there's a circle. You think about yourself, then you think there's a circle for others, and then life itself. And these circles kind of merge and they change sizes. So you can say it with words, you can say it with hand gestures, but I need to be able to put a picture in my mind of it.
Wow.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because you use your hands a lot when you're speaking more than I do.
Yeah. That's why when I had all those hand surgeries last year, I was so handicapped.
I didn't say anything.
I feel your pain. But I also think when you have somebody that doubles over between that pragmatist and the theorist, you can also use the phrase Venn diagram.
Mhm.
And the phrase Venn diagram will describe the three circles overlapping.
I was thrilled when I heard about Venn diagrams.
Yeah.
It made so much sense to me.
Yeah, I had a partner, and we didn't argue much, but when we argued, we had a very difficult time communicating. It's like we just couldn't get to each other. And finally, we were driving down the freeway, so you're stuck in the car with somebody for like 4 hours. And I started thinking about how she was talking about what she was talking about. And I finally asked her, I said, do you think in words or do you think in pictures? She said, I think in pictures, like obviously. And I'm like, what the hell do you think in pictures? That doesn't even make any sense. There could be those processing differences in how people put information together. And I'd been with her like 6 years at that point, and it took that long to figure that out. But people will put things together differently. If their hands are moving around, there's all kinds of little cues, little things that you can notice. It doesn't always tell you what it is, but when we start noticing the cues and the little things, little body things, the little eye things, if their eyes are moving around. One thing we had talked about on the team meeting yesterday, there's something called NLP, neuro linguistic processing. And the theory on that is when somebody's thinking, their eyes go a particular direction. That if somebody's thinking about something, this works for me. I'm usually looking up like this. I'm thinking about it. I'm whatever. If somebody's thinking about the past, if they're trying to remember something, oftentimes they'll look to the left, like they're looking back to find it. And if they're thinking about the future, oftentimes they'll look to the right, and that's the unknown. And then if they're looking down, that tends to be going into their body, into their emotions. So if somebody is like really, really heady and there's some reason why, like if I'm facilitating a lot of times with a heady person, I'll tell them, take a breath and just, let your eyes drop and go into your body and see what you're feeling. And then they can come out with that. So you can notice those things about somebody and start to pick up little bits that may just be the keys that help you pick those things up.
The pragmatist is a jump and go person. They're going to say something out of the box right away. I notice that if somebody will say, who wants to share? And if nobody in the room wants to share, my hand will be the first one up. Because for me, that nobody wanting to share is a little bit uncomfortable. So I want to do something. It's just what pragmatists do. And the pace is quick. I think for activist and pragmatist, the pace is quicker than the two people at the bottom quadrants.
As far as how they speak, yeah. Refue, you came off mute. Did you have?
I was curious, Sylvia, if you do doodle for connecting with the purpose of connecting the dots.
Always.
I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask, is this linked in any way to the leadership axis? There's a short course that I did with, I forgot the Rigi, I think. She did the leadership axis, and I see similarities. So I'm wondering whether it's linked to that at all.
We actually, it's a great question. We actually had that question yesterday as we were working on creating this graphic. There are some things that seem similar, and we looked at putting these in what we thought would map with more to life stuff, but it wasn't an exact overlay. And like Sylvia also has another method that she looks at called the DISC system that has a 4-quadrant kind of thing, and it doesn't match to this. But in more life terms, there's top dog, the warm access people, and underdog, and cool access people, and all of that. So and it's visionary and discerning.
Yeah, naturalists, yes, managers, and
it definitely does not go on the cool axis, warm axis quadrants.
No.
In fact, Reflector's the only one that fits on Cool Access Underdog, but none of the others fit in those same quadrants.
But this is about, remember, this is about learning styles,
Right.
which may be different than a leadership style.
Well, and I mean, even the leadership access, before it was called the leadership access, there was a version of it that wasn't about leadership. It was more personality.
Right. Right. That's the one I'm referring to.
So, but yeah, it is different because, and all of those things are attempting to categorize something where there's a lot of overlap. You know, just on this call, we can see where some of the time we're here and some of the time we're there. You know, my propensity, at least I used to think of myself just as 100% introverted. But now I'm finding that I think under social situations, I can be more extroverted. I'm not just a pure introvert in social situations. So some of it's culture, some of it's our experiences as we were growing up, what we were taught to think about ourselves or what we had to do to survive when we were growing up that pushes us in certain directions. So all of those things come into play. It's really complex. But has this been helpful? We're starting to understand a little bit more, a little bit more.
Yep.
So you want to go ahead and take a screenshot of this one, Ross?
Reminder. I know that, you know, like somebody said, I think the last time it'll be on the recording, but it's also nice to have just a screenshot. Oh, I didn't.
Some of the words are off the white page.
Yeah, the screenshot took care of it though. I think I captured everything.
Okay.
So thank you, Karen. That's a skill to be able to take a bunch of words and distill them down to a phrase or two. And the more you do it with the group, the better you tend to get at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as you're working on wrapping your head around this more, think about individuals that you know and think about, okay, I think this person is a pragmatist, and I think that because this is how they say this, or this is how they act that. And just look around yourself. Every day we've got examples of people walking by us, people we interact with that we can think about. Which of those four quadrants is that person? If I was to talk to them about enrollment like this, whether I ever do or not, like I could think about my boss, I would never talk to him about this because in that context, it's not appropriate. But I could think about him from this type standpoint. What would I say to him that would get him really, you know, excited and interested? So you can practice this just all day long, you know, walking down the street or going out to dinner with people or whatever. It's one of those things. Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, Lopa, we haven't been able to see you for quite a while. I think you had a light on earlier that allowed us to see your face. Is it possible for you to turn the light on again? I don't know. So what are you getting from looking at enrolling from different points of view, looking at different people and looking at it as an engaging conversation versus this is something I want you to do? What's coming to you?
I can jump in that, you know, I'm thinking about your question too. There's a, for me, I think there would be more of a presence of being very present. Because if I'm in a casual conversation, it's just kind of bouncing off the walls and whatever comes up and all of this. And this would be a much more conscious conversation if I'm realizing that this is a place that I want to talk to somebody about this or something else that is significant. In all the conversations I have in my life, the more I understand about the other person's communication style, the more effective I'll be and the more support I'll be for them. So it's really about being in the moment and being very aware in the moment more than I had thought about before this class?
For me, this class has been more helpful than any of the other of them yet. And I find I know the material well, but I find there's so much to think about in what we're discussing today that might speak to some of the quiet. We might all be in reflector mode at the moment, but I find today's conversation to be extremely helpful.
Good.
So is everybody else reflecting? Did you find looking at this in this way more fun, more engaging, just because we were in a different space about what we were doing?
Yeah.
Different kind of learning.
Well, and I'm thinking about the preview that Janet and I have planned and how I think we're already have a variety of things built in to address these different types of learners, because you can't just tailor your entire preview to one type of learner. So we've got some exercises, some breakout discussions, and different aspects that we hope will appeal to each of these types of learners.
I think that's an important thing. Karen?
Something that just comes up as you talk about that, Renashe, about the potential participants that you will have. Lately, I've noticed when I'm enrolling for a workshop, they give some questions ahead of time. Literally, when you fill it in, you're already giving them some feedbacks. And oftentimes, some of the educational courses, you don't interact with the facilitators in the way that we do in More to Life. But just hearing some of the examples that you gave, why you decided to attend this session, or maybe if it's just for your information as the facilitators, why not ask people, how do you like to learn? What kind of things would you like to know? And ahead of time, you can preempt some of the things that you want to add into the preview, or if there's something that you didn't add, maybe that's something that we can use in the space as well. So we get to know the participants ahead of time.
Yeah, and it starts
With
the
some key
engagement.
questions.
Yeah, it starts your engagement and your connection before you've ever begun.
And then they start to think about things that they probably typically wouldn't think about coming into a class. They're already primed to be in that exploratory phase.
When I think about Tuesday night's preview session, I know that one of the people is studying to become a life coach, and she has a particular interest in doing weight loss coaching. So she came to a preview session. It wasn't a preview session. It was a presentation I did at a hospital last week. We had an engaging conversation by phone for about 30 minutes about the kind of coaching she wants to do and all of that. So what I already know about her is that she's thinking ahead. She's thinking about what she could learn from this. She's thinking about how it might, benefit her. So I can see she's already done some reflection in preparation. That gives me a little tip about what to expect on Tuesday night when she shows up.
Really lovely. All right. So one of the other things we wanted to ask you about, if we're going to transition now to something a little different topic, how's your support relationship been going? Because we're going to talk about this some more next week. So be thinking about it. But, part of the way we set this up and we're hoping it would work would be that in doing this class alongside somebody else, you would have it seem like the two of you were creating a course together, and then notice what your partnership was like. Notice, what habits worked, what habits didn't, what you might be doing differently, those kinds of things. So if you have any thoughts about that at the moment, you can pop those up, but also be thinking about it for next week. And even in the ones that have had difficulty reaching out to your support partners and haven't necessarily had that kind of a relationship, how has that been for you? And what have you noticed yourself doing, to make that okay that they've been that way? Have you communicated, not communicated, those kinds of things? Just notice that, because there'll be times when you're partnered up with somebody where they don't show up in the way that you thought that they would. Me and Susie had a self-esteem course planned, and I was just too damn busy. And a couple of times, I'd asked to reschedule our meetups, and she finally came back to me and said, I've put in place in my life that I'm going to hold somebody accountable when something's, and it was done in a very loving way, in a very truthful way. And I was like, yeah, I get it. I see the life shocks too. It's just not a fit for me right now. And so it was something that, preserved our connection, and it preserved, the possibility of us doing something in the future. I wouldn't have always done it that way in the past, and she wouldn't either. It was new behavior for her. I hope, Susie, you don't mind me sharing that. So those kinds of things, anything that you're noticing about partnership. All right.
And how are you when somebody just drops off and doesn't respond? Like said Lopo, when your partner, you reached out a few times and they don't respond at all. What are the choices might you have?
No.
I had some thoughts of really reaching out somewhere else, but I thought, let me do my bit first in order for me to be able to reach out and find the most suitable time with others within the team, because it was suggested that I could reach out to the team. But somehow when I realized that I needed to reach out, it was more like at the last minute, and I thought it's my doing again where I dragged my feet irrespective of the other party not being reachable. So for me too, it was a self-reflection for me to say that reaction was actually waking me up to realize that, one, I don't often go out and ask for support, and two, it's for me to really just invest time in myself to be able to reach out. And the other thing is that I tend to prioritize others and neglect myself. So with other little matters, so I end up really not taking care of myself and making sure that I get support and reach out and find out where, if there's someone who's able to really connect with me amongst other participants who may still be having other support partners. But I think if I were to have asked, they would have allocated time for me to say, yes, we can talk on Wednesday or any other day when I have time. I'll signal when I'm free. So it's more about me really learning from that experience too.
Yeah, we actually had a conversation with the team before we talked about asking for what we want. And how many of us grew up in a situation where we were not encouraged to ask for what we want? I know I did. I knew the answer was going to be no most of the time, so I got tired of asking. And so I've had to learn to ask for what I want.
Yeah.
Colette?
I would like to ask Seth Lopo, what is it that you want for support?
You're on mute.
Yeah, Colette, can you please repeat that again? I didn't get it.
Yes. When you think of support for yourself at the moment, what is it that you would want from a support partner?
Yeah, if you had a do-over and could manufacture your perfect support partner, what would they be like?
It's I would say effectiveness in communication, but I think starting with me reaching out first, because sometimes, like you just actually shared your stories that about sometimes that the other parties actively involved with other matters which are keeping him busy. So if I reach out, I'll be able to know that what would be the best or suitable time for us to connect. So if I don't ask, I would never get to know what's happening. So it's for me to really just step forward and
Sometimes
ask
our
what
best
went
learn,
out. Mm.
sometimes our best learning is when things don't go well.
Mm,
And we see what's our
yeah.
reactive behavior. What do we do when things don't go the way we want them to?
True.
Can I ask you, said Lopo, how are you feeling when you think about asking for support for yourself?
I tend to get a bit, I would say, what is it? I would still even say something to do being a bit nervous too. It's more like really bothering others as opposed to really just being truthful to myself. So I tend to say, I would end up singing that lyric that says, "Don't bother me, can't you see that I'm busy?" So for me now, it's really just it's uneasiness for me to reach out. I would end up wanting to figure it out.
Well, do you know what? I don't think you'll get any medals for doing it that way, holding back. So if it's breaking it out into something else, I think we will cheer you on. What have you got to lose?
Nothing really, but just learn again out of me reaching out.
Yeah.
And I choose to take action and explore
May
that.
as well.
Mm.
May as well.
Yeah. It's not in our comfort zone sometimes. And the growth happens when we're uncomfortable. Growth doesn't ever happen in the comfort zone. We know that, you know.
Thank you, Setlopo.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Who else?
I saw Rafue's hand go up. I don't know. Did you have something to share?
Yes, it did go up. So I think we met quite well with Dita at the beginning. I do take co-responsibilities, but then as I was reflecting on myself, because I need to take my own, I can only speak on my part, right? And take the responsibility on my bed. What I've been noticing, contrary to what Janet was sharing earlier, with the self-circle being bigger, mine is the opposite. Like it's on a small scale, and the other aspect tends to take up more space and even the context. So I tend to react to what is happening, whether it's in the environment or what other people are requesting, versus sitting in to say what is Refilo wanting, and where the impact influences even the question that Colette just had, to say what support do you want or what do you want, becomes even difficult for me to answer for myself, because I just haven't given that space to really look from within. And I've seen that being a ripple effect, not just in setting up the um, license facilitator course itself, but I'm in the coaching space, which is pretty much the same thing. It's like when you think about it, it's enrollment, you're engaging with people. So like what I'm getting at, I'm seeing the connects that that small aspectness is hindering me to even make progress, not just in setting up the thing, but in my coaching work as well. So there's that difficulty of me, I don't know, grounding myself,
Yeah.
you know, to grow the self aspect, so that, you know, then it becomes for me to get to a point where it's easier to say, oh, this is what Refilo wants. This, because from getting that clarity, then it will be, oh, this is the support that I'll need. So at the moment, like it's been like I've just been in that reaction mode in the past few weeks, or I think it's even more than a few weeks, to be quite honest. Um, yeah, to be grounded in, yeah, I'm repeating myself, but then I hope you get me.
And what are you
So,
guarding against?
so what am I guiding against? So yeah, the relationship is not to say that it's not working. The partnership, it is working, because there are few moments that we've met, like I was kind of like feeling like on a cloud nine. But now I didn't take responsibility to continue it because it was like, oh, Dita will reach out to me, and she also had her own things that she was dealing with, which I completely understand. But in what I'm saying, okay, just to bottom line, I realized that I will defer and not put myself forward to say I could have made means to make it happen, whether it happens or not. But then I just didn't reach out because of the small aspect of self. So what was your question, so Sylvia? What was, you asked me a
Well,
question?
you
and
said I'm guarding myself. And what are you guarding yourself against? What is the fear that has
Yeah,
you guarding?
it draws me back to how I got enrolled, and I was like, I don't know if I had made progress in terms of putting others first before I actually don't know what I'm guiding myself against. Because anything that has to do with, I haven't done the assignment on the elevator speech as an example, like putting up a video, anything that needs me to, yeah, just even have a conversation time sometimes. Like it gives me knotted stomach. And even as simple as I'll give it, not it's an example, not with more to life, but then within the coaching space. All I needed to do was basically check in with the client who did the course and look into how are they, because what I do is coach training. It's a co-partner in a coach training. But then can I tell you the amount of anxiety that I had having a conversation of the person has already been enrolled, done the course, but it was just a matter of checking in. How can we best support you going forward so that you're able to apply the skills, you know, into your work, similar to what we're doing with Reignite. We've done the course, now we need to do application. My mind, I don't know, went into what, and even the conversation, I could feel it as I was speaking that I was not totally connected to the person, but then it was more about me worrying about whether am I saying things right, do we do, you know, so somehow I put myself into it to say, and to build up on the anxiety, even though the intention was, oh, I want to go in and connect. But then the result of it was, yeah, my mind talk somehow took over. So I don't know what am I guarding, because fear tends to be a big player. I fear rejection. I fear exposing myself. I fear to be seen, you know, like, yeah. So there's all that fear thing that tends where I get to be in a stuck mode. Yeah, but then I'll leave it there because now I'm mumbling. So
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to hear from you. Yeah, it looks like fear is something we all have in common. We all do. But naming it and looking at what's real and what is just what we're telling ourselves is important. Because most of the time it's bullshit.
true.
It's just not real.
Something that went in place a long time ago to protect ourselves that has become automatic, and it probably doesn't need to be protected anymore.
Yeah. Colette?
It just reminded me of the fear, you know, that it was so much part of me. I thought it's been really supportive to actually teach or be a licensed facilitator in the smaller groups, because I've needed to practice the work in order to be authentic about teaching it. And there is something at Bradwell to think about. If you focus on your purpose, that the fears tend to fall away. I'm paraphrasing it, but I found that really helpful.
Yeah.
Energy goes where attention flows. So we've got
Right.
We've got just 4 minutes left. I did want to update y'all on something that's coming up. There's a course, a pilot called the Transformation Experience. It's coming up in a few weeks. There are some previews for it. So there's a screenshot. I'm going to put some links in the chat about when the different previews are. So this is essentially, it's a More to Life weekend spread out across 12 weeks. And it includes 12 coaching sessions. So there's like a first 2-day part that's a chunk of the weekend, and then 4 weeks of coaching. And then the cost process and some other stuff for a 1 day, 4 more weeks of coaching. And then some of the Sunday processes on the third session and 4 more weeks of coaching, and then a completion. So what the organization has noticed over time is that, and probably you have too, people will come in and they'll do a weekend and they'll have a real deep experience, but they don't necessarily know how to incorporate that work into their life, how to do the processes for themselves. So this is intended to address that, to give people who want to really embed themselves and embed this in their life the opportunity to have somebody alongside them the whole time as they go through a 12-week learning. It's been in development for a couple of years now. There was a partial pilot last fall. This is much further along than that. We're doing the full 12 weeks this time. And then the target is for next spring that it gets rolled out as a completed product. So if you know of anybody that might be interested, you can send them these links to go to a preview. We'll send out the prospectus. I had it somewhere, but I can't find it. I was going to drop it in the chat. But we'll send the prospectus, which is like a flyer, out to you as well that you can forward to anybody that's interested. It's a really nice write-up. It's actually about 6 pages, and it addresses those 4 quadrants that we've been talking about. You know, some of it's historical, contextual, some of it's here's what you'll get out of it. So I like it. It's really well done. Ione and her team have done a really great job on that.
It's also on the hub.
Yeah, it's on the hub, and people can register on the hub if they're interested. Sylvia is the enrolling coordinator. So if anybody has any questions or you have any questions, you can reach out to her. She'd be happy to talk to you or to any prospects you might have. You know, this is a great opportunity for small businesses or groups that want to work on their leadership together, things like that. It also incorporates Lumina Spark, which is a really cool tool that does like a personality assessment, and it gives you feedback about what your everyday aspects are, and then when you go into overwhelm, where you tend to go from there, or when you know, things like that, what we would call reactivity. It shows where you go. Sylvia, were you going to pull up the splash?
Well, I was just going to show it. It's there's an app on your phone. I absolutely love this aspect of the transformational experience because you each get a personality profile that shows where you're strong at, where you're not so strong at, and then it'll show you what your underlying behavior is. Like this is your underlying.
Yeah.
But then when you're under stress, how it changes. Oops. I probably should have. How it changes when you are overextended.
Yeah,
And so it works really well if you're working in partnership with somebody like Janet and Raina Shea. I could see that it would work really well when you're doing a class together. Where are you strong? Where are you not so strong? And how can you bring that part of you forward? I just love it. I can't say enough about it. There's a payment plan for it, and it's open to people who've had more to life and also people who are new. And it's a pretty short run up, but we've got 20 places. Globally 20 places, and the first class is September the 15th. So I will send you all out some information about it, but it's worth thinking about it and it's worth talking about to some of your friends. We'll send you out an assignment. Your last assignment, remember, we're going to meet next Saturday. We'll just have a week in between. So we'll make sure that you get the assignment quickly, and it'll be about practicing these enrolling conversations. So thank you so much for your enthusiasm and your willingness today. Colette?
Before we go, can I ask Seth Lopo? I'm very happy to be your support partner this week. And I'm not attached to it, she said, but I really hope you take it up. Yeah. What do you say?
I saw a thumbs up from him.
Is that it? Can I hear your voice?
I said yes, Colin. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Colette, thank you for your generosity and your willingness to share yourself.
Will we be sharing our vision boards in the Google Drive? Or is that part of the plan, or are we gonna share them
We
at all?
certainly can. We certainly can. I don't know that everybody made one, but I would love to have it shared.
Whatever you've done that you'd like to share with the group, whether it's writings or drawings or boards or something, put it in a Google group and then a Google Doc, and then we can all look at it and see where you've gone with yourself.
Because the more you share, the richer our experience is for all of us. And it may ping something else for someone else. An idea, a way to go forward that you maybe haven't thought of before. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for the ones who are watching the recording today.
Y'all, thank you.
All right. Good day. Good day, all.
Can I ask you a
Bye-bye,
quick
everyone.
question, Sylvia?
Sure.
I'm just curious, sorry if this was covered in the global call that I haven't had a chance to look at, but I was wondering if there's any progress on presenting the coaching training that's been hinted at,
Yeah,
maybe coming up later this year or next year.
our plan is 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a list of people who are interested, and I'm going to add your name to the list. Yeah. And it will be online so that it's a global course and people who want to participate can participate. So thank you for asking. It's
Yeah.
definitely on the radar.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right.
Have a
Thanks,
good
all.
week, everybody.
Thank you.